There have been many disgusting statements made recently concerning allegations of improper conduct on my part.
On August 23rd, the Los Angeles Police Department searched the singer's Neverland Ranch in Santa Barbara County and his Century City condominium.
But even before a single piece of evidence was presented, the world had already chosen sides. The headlines were everywhere. The accusations were loud, and Michael, he was left fighting for not just his career, but for his life. But as you'll see, the truth looked nothing like the story they told you.
I deserve a fair trial like every other American citizen. I will be acquitted and vindicated when the truth is told.
Now, Michael Jackson, the greatest musician to ever walk the earth, from selling over 400 million records worldwide, to creating Thriller, the best-selling album of all time, to winning 13 Grammys, and performing in front of millions across every continent. Michael wasn't just an entertainer, he was a cultural phenomenon. But despite his unmatched success, his life was far from perfect. He grew up in an abusive home, battled with his self-image, and carried the scars of a troubled childhood into adulthood. Michael lived a very complicated life, one that no one will ever truly understand. But in 1993, he faced the darkest chapter of his life yet. Allegations that would follow him for the rest of his life, no matter what the truth was. It wouldn't be until 2005 that a new case would put him on trial for his freedom, in one of the most publicized court battles in history. A battle that sent him into deep depression, fueled his dependence on prescription drugs, and put his reputation and legacy on the line.
I am totally innocent of any wrongdoing, and I know these terrible allegations will all be proven false.
In 1993, Michael was at the height of his career. He was in the middle of his massive Dangerous World Tour, with Pepsi as his main sponsor, selling out stadiums across Asia, Europe, and beyond. The King of Pop was on his global domination tour. But in August of that year, everything changed. A 13-year-old boy accused Michael of sexual abuse, allegations that instantly became front-page news around the world, and the media frenzy was relentless. Michael was the biggest artist, if not the biggest artist on the planet at that particular time, so these allegations created a huge wave. We're talking about a guy who could sell out stadiums in minutes before social media, break record sales like nothing, and had the entire world watching his every move. The story was everywhere, and the media wasn't letting this one go. The story was this: a boy named Jordan Chandler, whose father, Evan Chandler, a Beverly Hills dentist, had befriended Michael earlier that year through his son. Michael has spent time at the Chandler family's home, taken Jordan on trips, and even invited him to his ranch, Neverland. But by the summer of 1993, their relationship would turn into the biggest media story in the world, something you couldn't even escape if you tried. And as the headlines kept coming, Michael, already in the middle of his Dangerous World Tour, kept performing under intense scrutiny. By November, the pressure was too much for Michael. He abruptly canceled the rest of the tour, announcing in a recorded statement that the horrifying accusations had left him physically and emotionally drained, and depended on painkillers just to get through each day. And shortly after, Michael decided to leave for Switzerland, disappearing from the spotlight. But while he was gone, the criminal investigation and civil lawsuit didn't slow down. If anything, it became bigger. Prosecutors were still building their case, and the media was dissecting every move Michael was making, and public opinion was turning against him fast. In January 1994, Michael agreed to a $23 million civil settlement with the Chandlers, something his legal team and Michael himself stressed was not an admission of guilt. He maintained his innocence but avoided a civil trial. After the settlement, however, the Chandlers refused to cooperate in the criminal case, and Jordan, the boy at the center of it all, never testified. Why? Well, because he had left the country, and without their key witness, prosecutors had no choice but to shut the investigation down in September 1994. Michael avoided criminal charges, but the damage was done. The shadow of the 1993 allegations never left him. In the months that followed, sponsors began to distance themselves from Michael. Pepsi, his biggest partner for over a decade, ended their deal before the Dangerous Tour even finished. The press never let the 1993 allegations go. For years, the Chandler case was a tabloid talking point, with headlines constantly resurfacing the details. In 1995, Michael dropped History, Past, Present, and Future, a mix of greatest hits and new songs that directly addressed the controversy. It debuted at #1 and sold millions, but it was also one of his most controversial releases, with fans and critics combing through the lyrics for reference to the scandal. From 1996 to 1997, Michael hit the road for his History World Tour. 82 shows, 35 countries, 4.5 million fans. It was the biggest grossing tour of the decade, proof he could still pull massive crowds. But in the US, his image still hadn't fully recovered, and behind the scenes, law enforcement still had their eyes on him. Between 1993 and the early 2000s, Both the Los Angeles Police Department and the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office stayed on Michael's radar, conducting follow-up interviews and keeping in touch with federal authorities. FBI files later made public confirmed that the Bureau had opened a case in 1993 and monitored Michael for over a decade, reviewed allegations passed along by other agencies, but ultimately found no reason to bring federal charges. By the early 2000s, Michael was keeping his head down in the US, avoiding the constant media circus. But every now and then he was practicing his, Euro step, and he was spending a lot of time in Europe. And in 2002, he caused a global outrage in Berlin after briefly dangling his infant son over a hotel balcony. But as wild as that moment was, it was nothing compared to what was coming next. By the way, if you made it this far, definitely drop a like on this conversation or on this video if you're enjoying it. Also, guys, we got a Blacky mug in the Blacky Speaks shop. So if you guys want something that looks really good to drink with your coffee or whatever you drink, water, tea, definitely go cop a mug. Honestly, this mug is very stylish. Anyway, back to the link is in the description, by the way. Back to the conversation. In 2000, Michael met a 10-year-old cancer patient named Gavin Arvizo. A meeting arranged by Jamie Masada, an Iranian-born Jewish comedian and owner of the Laugh Factory in Los Angeles, who often connected sick children with celebrities to help lift their spirits. Michael's friendship with Gavin moved fast, and he started inviting Gavin and his family to his Neverland Ranch. Gavin would later thank him for helping him be happy and beat cancer. But after a few visits, Gavin said that Michael stopped calling, and he felt like he'd been left behind. That changed in 2002 when Michael invited the now 12-year-old Gavin to be part of a documentary called Living with Michael Jackson. British journalist Martin Bashir spent around 8 months filming and interviewing Michael for the documentary. In one scene, Michael and Gavin are holding hands, footage that would later be used against them. Bashir asked Michael directly about a grown man having sleepovers with children and sharing his bed. Michael explained that sometimes guests sleep in his bed while he takes the floor, calling it a beautiful thing and insisting it was never as sexual.
Is that really appropriate for a man, a grown man, to be doing that? How do you respond to that?
I feel sorry for them because that's judging someone who wants to really help people. Why can't you share your bed? The most loving thing to do is to share your bed with someone, you know?
You really think that?
Yeah. You say you can have my bed if you want. Sleep in it. I'll sleep on the floor. It's yours. Always give the beds to the company, you know?
When the documentary aired in February 2003, it set off an international firestorm. Some even called for Michael's own children to be taken away from him. Michael called it a gross distortion of the truth. At first, even Gavin's mother, Janet Arvizo, agreed, saying it twisted her son's relationship with Michael and having lawyers file complaints with the UK's Independent Television Commission. But just months later, Janet completely reversed her position, flip-flopping like a sunny day in Barcelona, and became the key accuser in a criminal case against Michael Jackson. On the stand, she claimed a videotape of her and her children praising Michael had been scripted by a German man who barely spoke English. It was one of the many contradictions that would haunt this case. Bashir stood by his work, telling the press, "Here's an individual who's 44 years old, sleeping in the bed of children who have no biological relationship with him. I did not set out to ensnare him with a child," Bashir said. But Michael, as you guys probably know if you know Michael Jackson, he was a fighter, so he wasn't about to let Bashir have the final word. In response, Michael Jackson's team put together their own 2-hour special, The Michael Jackson Interview, the footage you were never meant to see, featuring friends and supporters, including Macaulay Culkin, who later went on Larry King to say nothing inappropriate ever happened at Neverland. Even with that defense, the public pressure kept on building. Gloria Grubber, president of Prevent Child Abuse California, called the fact that Michael was in the same bed as children he wasn't related to a red flag, and urged authorities to interview them. Santa Barbara District Attorney Tom Sneddon, the same man who led the 1993 investigation into Michael, even admitted that under California law, sharing a bed with a child without affirmative offensive conduct wasn't a crime. A surprising statement from the very man who had once tried to bring Michael down. But that attention on Michael was far from over. Just weeks after the Living with Michael Jackson documentary aired, the Los Angeles Department of Child and Family Services stepped in. From February 14 to February 27, 2003, they conducted a preliminary investigation into Michael and Gavin. According to a confidential report, which later ended up leaking, child welfare officials said that they didn't find any evidence to back up the accusations. For most people, that would have been the end of it, but not for Michael Jackson. In June 2003, Santa Barbara District Attorney Tom Sneddon reopened the case. Over the summer, investigators interviewed Gavin, his father David, his mother Janet, and his younger brother Star, and that's when the story took a dramatic turn. By November 2003, Gavin told police that Michael had sexually abused them several times between February 7 and March 10, 2003. Janet also claimed that during this same period, Michael had essentially held the family captive at Neverland. Later, the grand jury indictment adjusted the timeline, saying the alleged incidents happened between February 21st and March 12, 2003. And just days after those allegations were on the record, the case exploded into action. On November 18, 2003, police raided Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch with a search warrant, tearing the place apart as they searched for evidence.
We're going to go on and clear it, make sure, and we'll have other people that we find located into there.
Michael wasn't there at the time. He was in Las Vegas filming the music video for his single, One More Chance, with his 3 children at the time. But the fallout was immediate. 2 days later, on November 20, 2003, Michael turned himself in. He was booked, posted a $3 million bond, and was out in about an hour. In a public statement, he said that these claims were based on a big lie. Later on 60 Minutes, Michael accused the police of mistreating him during his arrest, even claiming his shoulder was dislocated.
They manhandled me very roughly. My shoulder is dislocated, literally. It's hurting me very badly. I'm in pain all the time. See this arm? This is as far as I can reach it.
But the legal fight was only just beginning. On December 18, 2003, prosecutors formally charged Michael with 7 counts of child molestation and 2 counts of administering an intoxicating agent for the purpose of committing a felony.
What is your response to the allegations that were brought by the district attorney in Santa Barbara that you molested this boy?
Totally false. Before I would hurt a child, I would slit my wrists. I would never hurt a child.
And then prosecutors went even further. A few months later, on April 21st, a grand jury handed down an expanded indictment, adding conspiracy charges involving child abduction, false imprisonment, and extortion. Michael pleaded not guilty to all charges on April 30, 2003. If convicted, he faced up to 18 years in prison. From there, his legal team spent months in pre-trial hearings, pushing back against the charges. Jury selection began in January 2005, drawing intense media coverage outside the Santa Maria courthouse. The lead up to the trial became a full-blown spectacle, fans camping out overnight, news crews parked outside daily, and Michael making headlines almost every time he appeared in public. And despite the circus, not everyone believed the accusations. Many still defended Michael and vouched for his character. Most famously, Donald Trump weighed in at the time, telling the late Larry King the following.
Interesting thing is, I've known Michael from many different standpoints, and Michael would spend a lot of time with my kids. I have beautiful kids, and at the time, like at Mar-a-Lago, and even in Trump Tower, the kids were very young. Michael would come, play with the kids. He just loved children. He was not a child molester, and I am certain of that.
But the real battle was about to begin. When the trial opened up in early 2005, prosecutors alleged that Michael Jackson had acted inappropriately toward the 13-year-old Gavin Arvizo, a cancer survivor he had befriended. They claimed one of Jackson's employees told Gavin that his mother's safety could be at risk. Santa Barbara District Attorney Tom Sneddon, the same man who had led the 1993 case against Michael, told jurors that Michael's entire world was rocked by the broadcast of the Living with Michael Jackson documentary, which one of Michael's own advisors described as a train wreck. Prosecutors painted Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch as a no-rules environment where normal boundaries didn't apply. They alleged that Michael had provided alcohol to Gavin and his younger brother, showing them sexually explicit material. The charges included 4 counts of molestng a minor, 4 counts of providing alcohol to a minor, and 1 count of conspiracy to hold Gavin and his family. Then on March 10, 2005, the trial hit a boiling point. Gavin Arvizo was about to testify, but Michael was nowhere to be found, and the judge in the case wasn't having it. He issued a warrant for Michael's arrest and said his $3 million bond would be forfeited if he didn't show up within the hour. 70 minutes later, Michael finally walked in, looking emotional, almost like he'd been crying. In a later interview, he claimed he had slipped in the shower and badly bruised his lung. And Michael called this trial the lowest point of his life. And, he pushed back on all the rumors about him being broke, saying it was just a part of a smear campaign. Earlier that month, however, on March 1st, British journalist Martin Bashir, the same man behind the Living with Michael Jackson documentary, he took the stand. Prosecutors played the documentary for the jury, but when the defense tried to question him, Bashir refused to answer. Then the prosecution brought in a different kind of witness. On April 4, 2003, Jason Frankia, whose mother had worked as a maid at Neverland, told the jury that Michael had inappropriately touched him multiple times when he was between 7 and 10 years old. Jason also claimed that during these incidents, it was usually an exchange of money so he wouldn't tell his mother. His mother later admitted she'd reached an out-of-court settlement with Michael, reportedly worth $2 million, and had sold her story to tabloids and TV shows. And that's when the defense saw an opening. Under cross-examination, Jason admitted that in the very first police interview back in 1993, he'd said nothing inappropriately happened between him and Michael, explaining that he said it because he didn't want to be embarrassed at school. Michael's attorney, however, argued that prosecutors had pushed Jason and his mother into making accusations, and that the lure of media money might have played a big role in their claims. And obviously money played a very big part in this entire thing. Personally, I think it was the only reason why all this was happening. Then came a wave of testimony from people who had once worked inside Neverland. Staff members who had been in Michael's home every day now taking a stand against him. In April 2005, former Neverland security guard Ralph Cajon testified about something he claimed to have seen more than a decade earlier, during the early 90s Jordan Chandler case. He told the jury he saw Michael inappropriately touching Chandler, but said he never went to the police at the time because he thought nobody would believe him. It had nothing to do with the current charges, but prosecutors used it as a part of their strategy to paint a pattern of behavior. Another ex-employee, Adrienne McManus, testified that she saw Michael giving quick pecks to some boys, including actor Macaulay Culkin. But here's a twist. Macaulay Culkin has always denied that anything inappropriately ever happened between them. And even when the whole world, had turned on Michael, he was actually one of the only people who stood firm, calling the allegations complete lies. And this is someone who had spent a lot of time around Michael, so if anyone would know the truth, it's him.
What happened at the house? That's what all these things that people are
that's
concerned
what's
about.
so weird,
What did happen?
Nothing happened, I mean, nothing really. I mean, we played video games, we played it as an amusement park. Well, the thing is with that whole thing is that, they go, oh, you slept in the same bedroom as him. It's like, I don't think you understand. Michael Jackson's bedroom is 2 stories. And it has like 3 bathrooms and this and that. So when I slept in his bedroom, yeah, but you have to understand the whole scenario. And the thing is with Michael is that he's not very good at explaining himself, and he never really has been, because he's not a very social person. I mean, you're talking about someone who's been sheltered and sheltering himself also for the last 30 years, or and so he's not very good at communicating to people and not very good at conveying what he's actually trying to say to you. And so when he says something like that, people, he doesn't quite understand why people react the way that they do.
Much of the media focused on the most salacious accusations, but rarely reported on the cross-examinations, where more often than not, the real truth came out. One example was Michael's housekeeper, Kiki Fournier. Under questioning from the prosecution, she said that sometimes kids at Neverland got so hyper, it was almost like they had been intoxicated. The media ran with that part, but they ignored what came next because on cross-examination, Kiki completely flipped the tone. She said that during the weeks the alleged abuse was supposed to have happened, the Arvizo boys' guest room was constantly messy, meaning they'd been sleeping there, not in Michael's bedroom. She even laughed at the idea that anyone could be held captive at Neverland, saying you could always walk out at any time with ease. And on top of that, she said that the Arvizo kids once got so wild, they actually pulled a knife on her. But she also made it clear she never saw Michael give them any alcohol. Right after that came flight attendant Cynthia Bell, who revealed that Michael sometimes preferred wine served in soda cans, so kids wouldn't see him drinking. Then the prosecution tried to bring in a more explosive witness, a former security guard, Christopher Carter, who at the time was sitting in a Las Vegas jail on robbery and other charges. But before he could even take the stand, his lawyer made it clear. In an earlier grand jury session, Carter had claimed that he once saw Michael and Gavin sharing a Diet Coke can filled with wine during a flight from Miami to Santa Barbara. But that story didn't hold up for long. Cynthia Bell, the same flight attendant from earlier, testified she never saw Gavin take a sip from Michael's can, and here's a twist. The soda can was her idea. She explained that Michael didn't like drinking alcohol in front of kids, so wine would be poured into a Diet Coke can to make it less obvious. It might sound like a small detail, but to some, that kind of thoughtfulness was exactly what they remembered Michael for. Next up was Michael's former cook, Philip Lamarck, who claimed he once walked into Michael's room and saw his hands inside Macaulay Culkin's pants. But he and his wife later admitted they had considered selling the story to a tabloid, but backed out at the last second, saying the middleman trying to buy it came across as shady. Lamarck insisted that they didn't go through with it because it went against our principles. In the words of Jesse Pinkman, what a load of crap. I mean, why even try to sell it if it was against your principles in the first place? Next, we had Michael's former house manager at Neverland, Jesus Salas. He took the stand, and he said he'd sometimes seen Michael drunk or under the influence of prescription meds, and claimed that once 3 teenage boys came out the wine cellar looking drunk after spending time with Michael. But when prosecutors pushed him to say Michael personally served them alcohol, Salas admitted that he had delivered a wine bottle to Michael's room, but also made it clear that sodas had been ordered for the kids as well. So at this point in the trial, you start to notice a pattern. The details from these witnesses kept shifting, and a lot of what was being said wasn't really connecting. The prosecution eventually brought in Michael's ex-wife, Debbie Rowe, hoping she'd drop a bombshell that would seal their case. They claimed Michael had forced her to record a scripted video in 2003, defending him while the Arvizo family was allegedly being held captive. But when Debbie Rowe took the stand, she completely flipped the script and said that she made the video willingly, and then went after Michael's business associates, calling them opportunistic vultures trying to sue him for money. What was supposed to be a devastating blow to Michael actually worked in his favor. From there, the prosecution rolled out their star witness, which was Gavin Arvizo. He took the stand at 15 years old and told the jury that after the Living with Michael Jackson documentary aired, Michael began giving him and his younger brother wine hidden in soda cans, showing them explicit material, and touched him on 2 occasions after they had been drinking. But under cross-examination, Gavin had to admit something damaging. He'd previously told his school administrator that nothing ever happened between him and Michael. His younger brother Star took the stand next, and his testimony seemed like it could be the nail in the coffin. Star claimed he had personally witnessed the abuse twice and that Michael had given them what he called Jesus juice along with internet pornography. But the defense came swinging, and they hit the jury with a bombshell from the family's past, which was a 1998 lawsuit against JCPenney. The Arvizo family had claimed store security beat them in a parking lot, with Janet Arvizo even alleging she was sexually abused and falsely imprisoned. The case ended with a $152,000 settlement, but now under oath, Star, Gavin's brother, dropped a confession that could blow his credibility apart. When Michael's defense attorney, Thomas, pressed him, Star admitted he had lied under oath during that lawsuit, not once, but multiple times. He had falsely claimed his parents never fought and that his father never hit him. In reality, the family had a long history of domestic abuse. It was the perfect setup for the defense's next move, Janet Arvizo herself. And the defense went straight for the kill, painting her as manipulative and untrustworthy, citing past perjury and even a welfare fraud conviction. Witnesses testified that while she claimed Michael had held her family captive, she was spending thousands on shopping and dining and refusing help from relatives for Gavin's illness. To finish the job, the defense brought in a lineup of people who had stayed at Neverland, including Macaulay Culkin, Wade Robson, and Brett Barnes, all of whom said they were never harmed. It's worth noting that years later, Wade Robson would reverse his stance and accuse Michael of abuse, but at the time of his trial, his testimony was clear and unwavering in Michael's defense. Even big names like George Lopez, Jay Leno, and Chris Tucker had once helped the Arvizo family financially, but they all ended up cutting ties with him, saying it became clear that they were being taken advantage of. By the end of the nearly 4-month trial, the jury was staring down 10 felony charges. The prosecution painted Michael as a predator who targeted vulnerable families. The defense, however, fired back just as hard, dismantling the accuser's credibility, pointing out the contradictions, and suggesting that they were motivated by money. Then came June 13, 2005. The jury returned to the courtroom. Everyone held their breath as they began to read the verdict.
Count 10 verdict, lesser offense. We, the jury in the above entitled case, find the defendant not guilty of providing alcoholic beverages to persons under the age of 21, a lesser included offense of that charge in count 10 of the indictment, dated June 10, 2005, for person number 80.
Not guilty on every single charge. Michael broke down in tears. His family rushed to embrace him. After months of relentless accusations, it was over. And this wasn't just a legal victory for Michael. I mean, for Michael, this was the closing of one of the most intense, damaging chapters of his entire life. The jurors later admitted that they didn't buy the story, especially after seeing Gavin's mother, Janet Arvizo, testify. Even though Michael Jackson beat this case, till this day, these allegations still follow his legacy. A lot of people still think that Michael did it, which is insane because anyone who's looked into this can see that it was nothing but a money grab. Ultimately, I think the saddest part about this case is that it broke Michael's spirit. I mean, after all, he was facing over 18 years behind bars for something he did not do. However, even in his innocence, the damage was already done. His reputation had taken a hit he could never fully recover from. In the years after the trial, he performed in public far less. He became increasingly reclusive, sank deeper into financial debt, and struggled with a secret dependence on prescription opioids. By 2009, he was preparing for a massive comeback tour, but instead, his life was cut short on June 25th, 2009, when he died from a drug overdose administered by his personal physician, Dr. Conrad Murray. To a lot of people in the world, you know, Michael Jackson was this evil guy who did all these things, but to me, it was always clear that he was in fact innocent, and these are the lies that they told you about Michael Jackson. Anyway, if you made it this far, drop a little like on this video, and if you're new here, my name is Blacky Speaks, digital handshake. Okay, nice to meet you. Subscribe. Michael Jackson and the lies that they told you about him. Any thoughts on this topic? Do you think that Michael Jackson was actually guilty like so many other people believe, even after everything we talked about? Very curious to hear what you guys have to say. Also, the Blacky mug is in the store. Link is in the description below. Go copy yourself one of these. It's looks very, very good. Anyway, catch you guys in the comment section below, but most importantly of all, catch you guys in the next video, man. I'm out. Peace.